Good morning, everyone. Let's get this thing going. Let me just change up my name to Tristan. What's up, Louie?
How you doing, Anthony?
I just changed my name to Tristan. Sorry, buddy. But you can call me Anthony, Louie.
Love the energy, brother. I love the energy.
Dude, it's coffee, bro. It's coffee. It's
You got a cold brew? Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Okay, I'm with you on that.
The best in the morning.
My wife did some sort of like nitro brew at home, and it was in a mason jar, and I was only supposed to drink half of it, and I didn't know, and I drank the whole thing, man. That's probably one of the most productive days by noon o'clock I've ever had.
You're like, shut up, honey. I'm writing a book. Hilarious, dude. That is very funny because it's true. It's true. All right, let me see who we got on. All right, everybody, let us know what city you're from. Most of you are from Southern California. This is for the region, Louie. So we got.
Yeah, I'm already recognizing some people in here that has either reached out or actually are clients with how prevalent we are within the Keller Williams community.
Dude, because you rock, bro.
It's just a missing piece of the business operations. You know, I'm surprised no other firm in the area has like reached out just to do stuff like this.
It's a smart play, bro. And I gotta give props to AJ, because AJ, who was Anthony, you saw the name. AJ's in charge of like putting everything together. And he was like, hey, should we bring Louie back in? I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. Bring him in. So
appreciate it, brother. Appreciate it.
That was AJ. All right, we got Jessica from Corona, Martina. Good morning, Martina from Santa Monica, not too far from me. Carlos Alvarado, LA. I love it. What part of LA, Carlos? So massive. And Joan Stuckey, Camarillo, and San Pedro. Joan, I'm in Newbury Park. I'm like right up the hill from Camarillo. So not too far from you. And Ronald Willipo, hello from San Pedro. Love San Pedro. Let's see what else we got. And then we'll get started, just giving people a couple more minutes. Louie, we got Pam from Glendale. Pam, I know Pam. I just have to read the name Pam, Louie. Every time I see Pam, I know she's from Glendale. Like now it's burned in my mind. Pam, you're in every single webinar and I love you. Thank you. Carlos, West Adams, I grew up at, nice. Grew up in Point, very good. Janet, I'm sorry, Beverly Hills. Mary, Simi Valley, that's not too far. Carlos, Doom, and Nagar. What's up, Nagar? Beverly Hills, who Paul, I think you know Nagar, right?
Oh, yeah.
Good. And Paul Moritz. What's up, Paul?
Hey, Paul, good to see you, man.
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
All right, Louie, you got the floor, buddy.
All right, guys, excited to be here. We're going to talk about Prop 19, and this is an awesome proposition that's going to impact California's real estate market rather significantly. I feel like this is just a beautiful proposition, a work of art, if you will. And we're going to dive into it. And so that way, those of you here, when you're on a listing appointment and you're dealing with someone that would qualify for this, I guarantee you that you will stand out. I'm also going to give you the calculation. I've broken it down to adding and subtracting. Obviously, we're not advisors as realtors, but I have broken it down to adding and subtracting. So that way you can go into a listing appointment and actually perform the calculation with your client. So we're going to dive right into it. My name's Louie Vazquez. For those of you who don't know me, I own Vazquez Baldwin and Family Incorporated CPAs. We're a CPA firm. We have two offices. Our Los Angeles County office is in the city of Los Alamitos, and our Orange County office is in the city of Irvine. We're going to dive into Prop 19. It's 5 pages. I hope to make it as quick as possible, just because when you talk tax, I think the attention span is no more than 10 minutes. And I'm going to try to get that in as quickly as possible. And we have a real intimate group here, so I hope to be able to answer questions as well for those of us in attendance. So I'll put this in the chat. You know, I have our two assistants, Aaron and Jocelyn here, and also our firm's cell phone number. You can call or text. I have both Aaron and Jocelyn full-time that pretty much oversee that phone. So can't necessarily promise it's going to be me that answers, but Aaron and Jocelyn will be able to get back to you guys promptly. You can also, I would write down Aaron's email address here. She can send you this PDF if you guys ask for it. That way you guys have that as you guys go about your careers as real estate professionals. So let's dive right into this, everyone, okay? So who is going to be impacted with this Prop 19? 3 people, okay? Three demographics. Seniors that are 15, okay? They're going to be able to utilize this up to 3 times, and this is going to extend to anywhere in the state, all right? Disaster survivors and disabled persons, they'll be able to utilize Prop 19 1 time. And I'm going to get into kind of the I guess you can say the caveat with this proposition, how this will impact inherited properties that are used to generate income properties that are being inherited. It is going to impact that demographic rather significantly. So I have 3 things that we're going to go over here in a couple of slides, and let's dive right into it. First situation, seniors who are over 55, that's the definition of a senior, okay? They're eligible to use Prop 19 up to 3 times in their lifetime, all right? This will go into effect after April 21st, 2021. So it's been approved, but this will not be allowed until after April 21st, 2021, which is April 22nd. That's when you'll be able to execute this. So very likely some of you might have a client in the pipeline that is a definition of a senior over 55 years old. It would be great advice to potentially put their transaction on hold until after April 21st, so that way they can execute this proposition. And they'll have 2 years to purchase the new property. So I have a real world example. Let's kind of walk through this, okay? So let's assume that I have a client that is a senior, someone that's 55 plus, and that's the definition of a senior, so don't take it offensive if, but someone over 55, all right? And let's say a senior currently lives in their home that they purchased in 1975 for all of $125,000, okay? They decide they're working with you, they want to sell after April 22nd, and it's looking like the fair market value is going to be about $950,000, just hypothetically speaking, okay? That's what it's looking like the property will sell for. And based on their property tax assessment, okay, the current property taxable basis value is $245,000. That's what their property taxes are assessed on. This is their basis value of $245,000. So from 1975 through 2020, it's probably increasing up to 2% every year, and their current property tax basis is $245,000. So assume a 1% property tax rate. This homeowner's property taxes is probably somewhere around $2,450 per year, okay? Because they bought it for $125,000 in 1975, and their current basis is $245,000. Again, assume 1%, they're paying $2,450. A big objection with these senior homeowners that want to potentially buy a new house is the fact that they're going to buy it, they're going to sell their house for $950,000, then acquire a property, and their property tax basis is going to be adjusted, okay? It's going to go up significantly, okay? Now, currently there's a couple propositions that within 8 counties of the state of California, you're able to carry your property tax basis. I do not believe Orange County operates this. I'm not sure about Los Angeles County either. I'm not 100% sure, but understand Proposition 19 opens this up statewide. Right now, there's only 8 counties in the state of California that operate under this rule. Right now, with Proposition 19, it's now statewide. And with the current proposition that exists, you can only do this 1 time. With Proposition 19, this allows this up to 3 times. So they have this home that they want to sell for $950,000. They bought it for $125,000, okay? And they're looking to purchase their replacement property. They're looking to purchase a new property for $875,000, okay? That's what it's looking like that they want to purchase. So they're gonna sell their home for $950,000, and they're gonna buy a new replacement property for $875,000. So the big thing to take here is the fact that they're gonna purchase a home for $875,000 and they're selling it for $950,000. So the replacement property is less than their current property, okay? So because the new home that cost $875,000 and the fair market value sales price of the old home was $950,000, this property costs less than what the original property is going to sell for. So because the replacement property is going to be less than the property that they currently own, they can carry over their old property tax basis. Simple as that. They will not be reassessed. So without Proposition 19, this homeowner would have their property taxes reassessed at this new $875,000 purchase price. Okay. And again, assuming a 1% tax rate, their new property tax payment on this new purchase would cost them $8,750 per year, which is a big jump from their current basis of $2,450. Okay. But because of Proposition 19, they would not be subject to a new property tax reassessment on the $875,000 purchase price. Okay. They would still continue to pay the $2,450 per year, their old property tax amount. So there would be no reassessment. And this effectively would save them about $6,000 a year. So again, this Proposition 19 is not limited to counties like I think it's Proposition 58 or Proposition 60. It's limited to just 8 counties. You can do this anywhere in the state of California, and you can do this up to 3 times. One other thing is the fact that they have 2 years to purchase from the day they sell the property to purchasing a replacement property. They have 2 years to find and purchase the replacement property. So very straightforward. If the replacement property costs less than the property that they currently own and want to sell, they just simply carry their basis with them.
Hey, Louie.
Yes.
So question, is there any maximum? Because we're in the west side of LA right here. And I'm thinking, I've got a high net worth friend that was going to, buy and sell, big numbers, probably fair market value his house in Palisades now is about $12 million. Is there a maximum on this?
So all they look at is what is the property that you currently own? What is that going to sell for? And then what is that replacement property going to cost? Mm-hmm. If it's less than, then they just carry the basis. It does not matter. But if the replacement property costs more than, that's the next slide. There is a calculation that comes into play.
Okay. And I just for the record, I was going to say, I was real mad about that 55 plus thing because, seniors 55 plus, because I happen to be 55, but now we're talking real value here. I'm not mad anymore.
That was a good call. I love that.
I'm with you on that.
Now you're happy. Louie, quick question.
Right, you have to make a joke when you're talking taxes, a little, right? Just a little. But this is good.
I try to.
I'm right. Taxes and edge of my seat don't generally go in the same sentence, but you got me.
Quick question, Louie.
Yes.
A few people are asking if they're going to receive a copy of this. Can you place your email in the chat so they can email you?
Let me do that right now. So everyone, why don't you everyone just take a quick minute, email Erin. Like I said, she's my full-time firm manager. I would write down Erin's email here, and I would jot down Jocelyn's email here. Okay. That's the firm manager and the firm assistant. We have this saved on our Google Drive. They'd be more than happy to give this to you guys. Okay. So yes, please email us and you'll get a reply within 10 minutes.
Thank you, Louie. And the other question, Barry Shapiro. What's up, Barry? He says, Ventura County has Prop 60 and Prop.
Yeah. Okay. So Ventura County, I knew it was somewhere in Southern California. I wasn't sure. I know for a fact Orange County does not comply. I wasn't sure if it was Los Angeles County or Ventura County. So so this Proposition 19 is expanding it to all counties within the state of California. And then that Proposition 60, you're only able to use that one time. With Proposition 19, you're able to execute this 3 times now. They give you 3 opportunities to continue to transfer your basis over.
I love that. They should have unlimited times, dude.
2 years ago, they had another proposition. I forget what it was, and the Board of Real Estate was really behind it. For whatever reason, this was on the ballot 2 years ago. It did not pass. And I remember when it came out that this didn't pass 2 years ago, I was like, how the heck did this not pass? It's like awesome, right? It solves so many problems. But this Proposition 16, I'll get into, I feel like, why this passed, which is going to be how this is going to impact people who are inheriting investment properties. So,
and already one of the things too, I always think, anytime we talk about anything, I bring it right back to lead generation, and I'm already thinking now, okay, so we're going to get the title report, and the title report we're going to run for, like, how do we do that? Owners over 55, and then that have a low cost basis in their house. These are people that you can market directly to, go, okay, hey, were you aware? Right. Or I guess you could just do it to your whole farm. If you did like a really nice postcard and said, hey, when I see Kelly Alois from our office. So I'll use Kelly's a great lead generator. So you're like, Kelly, hit those postcards and say, I'm your fiduciary. I'm the person with the knowledge for you, and I just want to let you know. And what are the other realtors doing for you? So this is valuable information.
Yeah, I don't know how many people want this. I think we've gotten about 2 or 3 consultations that, we're charging $850 for the consultations to do this calculation with homeowners who are interested in this. So people are already searching for the information, reaching out to CPA firms. Mm-hmm. As a realtor, if you can get this information out, you're going to kill it.
Louie, so let's say we send out this information on an email or a text, or, hey, just giving you out the latest information on what to do, right? People are very appreciative, but that next step of, they say, well, how does it really work? And at that point, do you want us to connect them with you? Is there a specific email or number that we should send them to so that it can continue along those lines? Because I don't want the value to just end and be like, well, what do I do next, right?
Yeah, you can refer them to us, but the majority of people, that relationship with the CPA firm is so special. It's an arduous process of switching from CPA to CPA. So, very likely their accountant is probably very aware of this. It's just, accountants are just introverts. So we're not very proactive in reaching out to our clients. But for the most part, if they have an accountant, CPA firm that they're already working with, it's very likely they're very knowledgeable of this. So sure, you can refer them to us, but I would just refer them to their current accountant, who probably knows everything there is to know about this. I mean, this is, in the grand scheme of this isn't very complicated. All I'm doing is just communicating how this works to you, whereas the majority of other CPA firms are waiting for clients to come to them. Mm-hmm. So guys, let's get, is it okay if we go to the next slide this is really the meat and potatoes. Yeah. This was the appetizer. Okay. This is the appetizer and the cocktail. This is the old fashioned and hors d'oeuvres. All right. Now we're going to get into the ribeye. Okay.
All right.
This is the situation of what happens when they want to purchase a home that costs more than their current home. So in this situation, let's kind of walk through it. I'm sure people are dealing with clients that have similar situations, and let's just walk through it, guys. All right. So I'm using the same facts from the previous page. Let's say you're dealing with a 55 plus senior. And again, their definition of senior is someone over 55. That's not my definition. That's the state of California. Okay. So they purchased it in 1975 for $125,000. All right. And they're looking to sell it after that April 21st deadline. They're looking to sell on April 22nd or more. And it's looking like their home is going to sell for about $950,000. And their current property tax basis is $245,000. So again, we're assuming a 1% property tax rate. They're paying about $2,450 a year on property taxes. So they're going to sell their home for $950,000, and they're looking at a new home. Okay, they're looking at a new home that's going to cost somewhere about 1.5. Okay, so that's the biggest thing that we need to take away from this example is the new home that they're looking to replace is going to cost 1.5, and their existing home is going to sell for 950. Okay, so because that new home that costs 1.5 and the fair market value sales price of the old home was $950,000, this new property costs $550,000 more than the old property. And here's the calculation. It's very straightforward. It's literally adding and subtracting. It's just a matter of what you're adding and subtracting. So we need to take this new property purchase price of 1.5, that property that they're going to purchase after they sell their home, 1.5 in this example, you subtract the old property's sales price. So the property that they're going to sell is $950,000, and they're purchasing a property for 1.5. So we subtract that. Then you need to figure out what their current property tax assessment basis is, because you have to add that back. So in this example, their property tax basis is $245,000. So Adding and subtracting. This is first grade math here, guys. I've broken it down as easy as it can be. Okay, there's no X, Y, multiplication, subtracting, calculus, derivatives, etc. All that fun stuff. All that fun stuff us accountants love. Simple. The property that they're going to replace it with costs 1.5. That's the first element here in this calculation. You subtract what their old property is going to sell for. So again, $950,000, and we have to add back the current property tax assessment basis value of $245, and we get this new number, $795,000. This $795,000 off of this calculation, this is their new property tax assessment back basis value. Okay, so even though without Prop 19, they would have their property tax reassessed at that new purchase price of 1.5. Okay, and again, assuming a 1% property tax rate, they would be paying $15,000 a year in property taxes. But now with this calculation of Prop 19, the property tax assessment is $795,000. So again, assuming 1%, their annual property tax expense would be $7,950. So you see how, so basically this would save this homeowner $7,000 a year. So this is the calculation. Even though they're buying the property for 1.5, based off this calculation, they're going to be reassessed only at $795,000. So this is how it works for a property that costs more than the property that they currently own. It's a quick calculation. You can see how really efficient this is in the reassessment. It's actually incredible. So Paul, that question you asked previously, the question is the property that they're going to sell in relation to the property that they're going to replace, what do those two numbers look like? And then you would throw it into this calculation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and for the first time ever too, I think we're dealing with tax code math that I think we could actually handle. And
right. No question.
It's not complicated.
I'm doing West Side, LA math, like, okay, so, you bought the house, you have essentially a tax basis of $1 million on a house. You're paying 10 grand a year, period. Right. Now your fair market value of the house is $3 million. Right.
Right.
If you want to go and move up, and you want to move up from the $3 million house to the $4 million house, you would be going from a $10,000 a year tax bill to a $40,000 a year tax bill.
Right.
And with this new prop, you would essentially you would be able to take out the market gain, which in that little example I just did would be $20,000. So instead of going from $10,000 to $40,000, which, that's a
big jump,
big number, man. That's why I wanted to know, that's why I wanted to know if there's any upper limit. And in this case, you would then deduct out, as I understand, the 20 G's from the fair market value increase. So yeah, you would be moving from a $10,000 to a $20,000 tax basis in that move that I just did in my head, really. But it would, instead of a 10,000 to a 40,000.
Right.
That is
a significant mitigation.
Oh yeah, that is enough for people not to want to move. I mean, like I said, I had a friend house in the Palisades, and we'd all like to have this guy's money, and he's still just basically at a zero. I mean,
wow.
He's still sort of, right. I mean, he was in a house that's probably worth 15 million, but I think he had a tax basis under 5 million. So you're looking at,
nice.
Wow, you're looking at, now it's hard for me to even do that math. You're looking at $100,000, tax basis difference. And he really did want to move, I don't think he wanted to move into a $15 million house, but he was moving into a $12-13 million house. So he was actually going to carry his tax basis forward.
Right.
And he didn't want, and I'm telling you, we'd all like to have this guy's money. And this guy did not want to move because he did not want to pay, an extra $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year in property tax. He actually did it, interestingly. It was a year or two ago, so he must not have seen this coming. But this is value that you can use to market to your database. At the very least, you're going to seem like the smartest person around, and you're giving him this great information. When Louie says, "Hey, some people are already calling me for this information,"
right.
I get it. I'm going to tell you from my experience, Louie, and all these great realtors listeners can disagree, but the people who are calling Louie, they're in the like 1% of people that are on top of this stuff.
Right.
The other 99% or at least 50, 60, 70%, you can mail them this postcard 6 months from now. I'm not suggesting that. Let's get on it now, but you mail them this postcard 6 months from now, they're like, wow, this is great information. Now's the time to do it, but you'll be talking to an audience that will think you're,
That's a great point, Paul. I think on the mailing side, if we take this another step forward, and if we're farming already, right, in these areas that this could make a massive difference, and we start calculating numbers, and as long as we put a disclosure on there, but this could be pretty big for a lot of people that own homes that they've been waiting for this specifically. I like that idea, Paul. Louie, there's a few questions, so I want to pause you so that we don't lose them. All right,
just real fast. I just want to make sure everyone's clear. There's that Proposition 60 that exists with Ventura County and another 7 counties. That only applies to properties that are equal than or less than. Proposition 19 is opening this to properties that cost more than the current property value. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that Proposition 60 is cool and all, like, yeah, that was great. But Proposition 19 is opening this thing up big time.
Yeah, that's a massive difference. So let's start with the questions. Christian says, does Prop 19 supersede Prop 60 and 90?
I would assume. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if that's exactly the language that the bill is written. I haven't read all the text. I just found the calculation part, the good nuggets, but I would assume that it would definitely supersede.
All right. And does Prop 19 allow buying first and then selling later? Do you know?
That's a great question. So it's very clear that you have to sell the property first, and then that opens up your clock of 2 years of replacing. So based off of that, I feel like it's very clear that you have to sell first, then acquire.
All right, good. Nagar has a good question. Are there any extra perks under Prop 19 for real estate agents?
I kind of feel like, I guess those of us in attendance, that actually the perk is that now you know how to do the calculation. You can market this.
Knowledge.
Well, yeah, and also anything that makes the transaction less expensive, right, is going to favor buying and selling. That's a huge advantage for realtors, period. Well, there's a stickiness to the tax basis. I mean, the tax basis, the original tax basis thing is great, and that is that, hey, in a lot of states, maybe people don't even realize this, but I own property in a different state, and they're reassessing constantly. So
sure,
when you're in that same situation that I said, so you move into the house at $1 million, you're paying $10,000 a year. Now the property value goes up to $3 million. The people reassess the taxes, and then what happens is I'm dealing with a $10,000 tax bill, less than $1,000 a month. And I'm moving up to a $30,000 tax bill. And that might be enough for a retiree, for example, to not be able to afford to live in their own house. So that's why we got the tax, property tax freeze to begin with, which is very useful. But that property tax freeze will literally freeze people in their property. So it is a disincentive to move until this new prop came out. And now, not only is the disincentive gone, but this is gonna stir the pot to where people really, it's an incentive. You can carry this. You're rewarded for having bought property essentially in California. You're going to be subsidized in your new home because you bought before. Again, in that buying a $4 million house. When somebody's buying a $4 million house, every person that walks through that door is going to be looking at a $40,000 a year.
Right.
That is daunting. Okay. When
That's
you have a client that you're moving from the house that they have a tax basis of 1 million into that $4 million house, you now have a buyer that's walking through the threshold that has an advantage over everybody else. And that is, hey, I'm walking into this house and I'm carrying along with me essentially a get out of jail free card, right? That like I'm going to pay 10,000 wherever I go. Well, with the difference of the if it's more expensive, but it's definitely a get out of jail card free for the amount of fair market value that you've increased, for sure.
Louie?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
First of all, Paul, that was awesome, buddy. I love that. Really good perspective on that. Louie, can you dictate the email? Because I know there's like 7 people who keep on messaging who missed it.
Okay. Let me type this in.
That's
but
awesome.
Yeah, Paul, I would just agree everything that you're saying. Let me just pull this up so everyone sees it real fast again. So here's the emails, so that way we can send this to you directly right now, Aaron and Jocelyn. But that's a heck of an objection when you're dealing with a potential motivated buyer that wants to actually buy. But the objection is what about my property tax basis? And really, that's an objection that's very hard to overcome unless they live in Ventura County.
Yeah.
Now that objection no longer exists. If they bring that objection up, you have the answer here that, well, do you know about Proposition 19? So now that objection of my property tax basis not being carried over, they've eliminated that objection. So what this is going to do to the market in terms of buying and selling, Paul, I believe that it's going to be really interesting to see how much that increases year over year. I'm pretty sure that's going to increase rather significantly, and Proposition 19 is going to be one of the biggest reasons why that metric is increasing.
Somebody also asked, Kelly asked, can you move from one locale to another? So, LA to Palm Springs, or even further, let's go like San Diego to San Francisco, can you
statewide? All counties are accepting, are having to adapt to this and put into place this proposition statewide. So, you may have grandma and grandpa that live in Riverside County, but you're growing your family in Ventura County, let's just say, or Orange County. Well, now grandma and grandpa, they can move to Orange County to be around their grandkids with really no worry about what's happening to the property tax basis.
Yeah. Now, is there any benefit to moving out of state? That's a question that was asked. Good question.
So this is a state of California proposition. This is an incentive to stay in the state of California. Yeah. Okay. Going out of state, that's a different story. That is a completely different story. So this is an incentive to stay within the state of California.
You're going to lose, like I said, you can, another way of looking at it, and you guys helped me think this through when I was giving my example, but for example, the way I think the other way to look at it is just that sort of get out of jail free card. So if I had a $1 million tax basis, I'm paying $10,000. Now my fair market value of my house, in fact, I sell because you have 2 years to make the new purchase, and I sell at $3 million. I'm carrying with me a $20,000 get out of jail free. Now, if I buy higher than 3, that $20,000 gets applied to. But if it's 3 million or less, I know I don't have to pay any more taxes than the last place that I lived in. And if it's any more than 3 million, I get to carry forward basically a $20,000 a year write down on, and like you said, on California property. So I do believe that that's going to be glue for people to stay in the state. And actually, I guess if you sold and you left the state and you wanted to come back, as long as you came back within 2 years, you could identify the new property and still keep it. It seems like.
You mean when people move to Austin and then they realize it sucks and they want to move back? Great point.
Hey, Tristan said it. Great
point. Some other questions here, and then we'll go right back to you, Louie. I just don't want to miss them because there's some good questions.
The bad aspect, if you will, of Proposition 19, the caveat. But yeah,
all right, we'll get right into that one. Is a married couple considered one person if a divorce occurs? Do they each have 2 visa?
That's a great question, Mary. That's a question I'm not 100% sure on. That's a great question. That's something that we either have to look further into, but that's a great question. I don't have the answer for you on that.
All right. And what about, does one homeowner need to be 55 or older only?
Yeah, that's another good question. That I don't have the answer to. I have to figure out, do both homeowners need to be 55? So we're starting to get into the details here. This is more of a high level presentation, but these questions are definitely good questions. We can look into that and get back to you.
I'd love to have you back then, Louis Paul. I think we could do like beginning of the year once this is outlined a lot more too.
Yeah, sure. All
right, we'll let you keep on going.
This is such a big deal. I would be so tempted between now and then to like have
let's do it quarterly.
Yeah, well, I was going to say have our marketing department just like, sort of mock up some great pieces that we could just put in the chat box so that you can have a plug and play. I mean, it's not rocket science, but again, it's right where my brain goes, because this is not a small thing. This is a big deal in terms of
huge deal.
Marketing to your database. This is killer.
This is the right messaging that you need to have. I think we need to understand this better so that we can take advantage of it.
And also, one of the things I just know from being, either a lawyer or in business for so long is that, first of all, I appreciate all the information that Louie has. And I really appreciate when somebody as smart as Louie also says, you know what, not sure about that yet. And from having been, a lawyer in business for so long, I know that when these tax things are passed, that it takes a little while even for the legislature to issue some further, or the taxing authority to issue some further guidelines about how it can be used, with these great questions like, oh, well, what if you have a married couple and one's 55 and one's 53? What do you do then? It's like, geez, I don't even think the legislature thought about that. So the tax authority has some leeway to put out guidelines. And sometimes it takes a little while for the guidelines to come out.
Well, they have amendments.
Yeah.
And I'm confident enough to say I don't know everything.
Yeah, for example, the IRS, we're talking about state, so we're talking about franchise tax board, we're talking about state law, and I don't know how they do it, but I do know the IRS, they produce guidelines. They just go, oh, well, geez, we've had 1,000, 10,000 questions on this one area. It's not that clear.
Sure.
And they'll issue those guidelines, which are like law. After the big law is passed by the legislature, they give authority to the IRS to develop their own guidelines to make it easier to figure out how to use.
Just look at this case in point that we just have with these PPP applications of getting the money and then getting it forgiven. They've made 16 changes to that thing. It came out in April here or December. God only knows. It's looking like they're going to pass a second round, Paul. I've been in touch with Jennifer on this. It's looking like it's going to pass for a second round by the end of this week. God only knows the changes they're going to have with that one this time around. So It's just the way the game works. This is the big picture information. And again, as Paul said, I know a lot, but I'm confident enough to say I don't know everything. So, but I can say that we are following this closely, and we could potentially do more of these as we go along. And we are reaching out to all of the individual forward entities, Paul, to do webinars going into January on this, just each market center more intimately.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
So let's get into the caveat, the kind of the downside of Proposition 19. So a reassessment will be done on investment properties that are inherited and are being continued to be used as investment properties. So let's go over this and you guys can kind of understand what we're dealing with here. So inherited properties, okay? Proposition 19 is impacting inherited properties rather significantly, okay? So if a property is being inherited and it is used as an investment property, okay, and an investment property is a property that generates income, okay? So the property is a business. It's not a primary residence, okay, but an investment property. You will not as it currently stands, you inherit the property tax basis if you inherit a property, but come April 21st, April 22nd after, you will no longer inherit the property tax basis value, okay? It will be reassessed to the fair market value of the property. So this is only, I'm only talking about inherited properties, and I'm talking about the property tax basis. I'm not talking about the step up in basis as far as income tax. That's a more complicated thing, but I'm talking about the property tax basis. It will be reassessed, okay? This will be a problem for the beneficiaries, okay? The people who are receiving the inheritance, right? And the property, and let's assume that the property already has tenants. So here's an example. Let's say mom and dad own a triplex in Riverside County and they purchased it for $250,000 in 1995, okay? Their current property tax assessment basis is somewhere around 325. But based off of appreciation in Southern California, let's say that the current fair market value of this property in Riverside County, this triplex, is currently $1 million, okay? So assuming a 1% property tax rate and a property tax basis of 325, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, they're only paying $3,250 per year in property taxes, even though the property is currently worth $1 million. So let's say mom and dad passes away and now I'm inheriting this property and I want to keep it because they're good tenants in the property. It cash flows positively every month, okay? Probably because it's all paid off too. And again, let's just remember that even though I'm inheriting, it's worth $1 million, but I still want to keep the tenants in it. I don't want to move into it. I don't want to sell it. I want to keep it because it's producing positive cash flow. It's a good property. I know the tenants. And I want to continue being I want to carry on the landlord legacy. All right. Well, we have a problem with Proposition 19. Okay. Because the property tax assessment is going to be based off of the current worth of the property that you're inheriting. Okay. So let's assume a 1% property tax rate. They're going to take into account the fair market value of $1 million. Okay. So now your property taxes is going to go up to $10,000 a year, even though mom and dad, before they passed away, where the property tax assessment basis was 325 and you're only paying $3,250 per year. So if you're inheriting a property and you're continuing to use it as an investment property, you're not planning on moving in, okay? You're going to continue to use it as an investment property, or you're inheriting mom and dad's primary residence, and instead of selling it, you guys want to hold on to it and put renters in there, okay? If you plan on using that inherited property as an investment property, you're going to generate income, it will be reassessed, okay? So this is a little bit of an issue, especially within the rental market where it's already quote unquote very expensive to rent. This increase in property taxes, the landlord is not going to pay it. He's going to pass this expense off to the tenants, as with every increase in business, the customer, the client, the tenant.
Louie, I have a question on this, on the inheritance part. Does this apply, or is there a way around this if we create a revocable trust prior to the parents passing and then bringing in the rest of the family into that trust, or does that still apply?
Yeah, it would still apply. All the trust does, understand trust or no trust, this is still going to apply. All the trust does is avoid probate, and it dictates how that inherited asset, inherited estate is going to be distributed. That's all a trust really does. It avoids probate and there's clear direction. That will not avoid this increase in the property tax basis. So these are the rules. Go ahead,
Louie. Also, and I'm thinking LA, I'm thinking LA County, or I'm thinking some of the cities in here that have, I mean, if there's rent control, this is an absolute nightmare because because now, if you're a landlord and, forget about the politics, right? Because we start with that, we're going to go off some real deep end, but forget about the politics. I'm looking at it as math, right? And so I own property in LA that is rent control, period, full stop. And of course, what that does is that holds the rents down. And the reason that they do that is so that a renter doesn't get booted out of their place, so that they can stay where they are. Now, if I if I own this property and I want to give it my will, it in fact is in my will, right? Now, I've got a family that's going to be inheriting property that the rental income is fixed, but now my property tax can go through the ceiling. And
Right.
again, forgive me for thinking about it like a realtor. And that is, it will create opportunity, because people that have had properties for a long time are going to, they're going to have to, these trusts are going to have to sell.
Right. Exactly.
They're going to have to, because if you've got, just again, I sometimes it just makes it easier for me to think of in blown up numbers, but if you have a family that was fortunate enough to have a 20-unit building in Santa Monica, where I live, where there is rent control, and you've had that for a long time, you're going to have renters in there that have stayed forever, and you're going to have a property value that has exploded over time.
Right.
And when that goes to inheritance, you're going to have the rent roll essentially frozen while you're taking the property tax, through the ceiling. And it's going to create create a requirement to sell.
Yeah, this is also applying to commercial property as well, Paul. So
Wow.
it's gonna, I think a lot of people who are inheriting the property, what we're gonna have once, they meet with this, once we tell them about the step up in basis, I'm sure you know about that as far as income tax is concerned. Once we tell them about this, I think they're gonna just say, let's just liquidate, let's just sell. So I feel like this is gonna create a lot of sellers. So,
Yeah. And one of the things that, again, when you're acting like a fiduciary for your clients, one of the things that people do, it's just ideas, right? You really want to be an advisor to your clients. And one of the things that you could do is this is a reason, honestly, to increase life insurance. And the reason why I say that is, one of the things that people do that are going to pass along they're going to pass along an inheritance that is large enough that it creates this really big tax hit for the people who are inheriting, is sometimes they'll buy a life insurance to the point where at least the insurance policy will cover, the tax increase.
right.
So
Okay.
it's just an idea,
A lot of good questions in here asking. So this is it sounds like we have some creative realtors in here asking. So
real estate agents are by nature extremely creative. So.
Yeah, sure. This is only applying to if you're going to inherit a investment property and continue to utilize that property as an investment property. If you inherit mom and dad's home and you decide to move into it, so you're going to use it as a primary residence, this would not apply to you. So here's the loophole. What's to stop me? And I don't know how the counties are going to police this. I'm going to inherit the property. I'm going to live in it for a year or so. Then I'm going to rent it out. Okay. I don't know how the counties are going to police that. Okay. Because that's a tremendous loophole. Maybe that's something that people will be able to utilize, but that's a loophole that's open right now. It's a matter of how counties are going to adapt to that and potentially close that. I don't have no clue how they would police that. Because that's essentially what I would think right now. If I'm the single family residence that mom and dad passed down to me, I'm gonna live in it for a year, establish it as a primary residence, then I'm gonna rent it out, and then I would potentially keep my basis. But I don't know how the state, there's no language or anything like that to prevent you from doing that. But it is a loophole, and the counties are gonna likely close it. But I mean, the only way you would close that is you would have to significantly increase the assessors, that assessor staff. So I don't know. I don't know how they're going to police this.
Kelly says people are sneaky. Kelly, that's an understatement.
Yeah. And I always think about it, even in terms of not being sneaky. It's just what do laws do that change behavior. It's weird. Like this would be an incentive to move into, you know, and you said mom and dad's house, but it would have to be a house that they were using as for rental income prior to. No.
One more time, Paul.
If you're inheriting a house and you wanted to rent the house out, is that going to then change the nature of the property to income, or
Yeah, it would be an investment because you're going to use it to create income. So you're renting it out, and then there would be a reassessment.
That is, I hadn't even thought of that. I was thinking about people, you know, like, oh, so mom and dad had two houses and they're, you know, which is, I mean, let's put it into real terms. Mom and dad have a house in LA. And then, you know, like to Kelly's point, they have another house in Palm Springs that they rent out. Now, if you know, that renting out would make that an investment property. So if you run out there and say, hey, we're going to live out in the Palm Springs house, then you get out of this. But what I hadn't thought about is now mom and dad, you know, you inherit a house in LA, you inherit a house in Palm Springs, and you go ahead and rent out the Palm Springs house. Now, all of a sudden, it's an investment product. That's going to be very hard to police.
How are they going to police that, Paul?
Yeah. So in other words, I go, hey, you know, mom and dad, you know, they had the house in Santa Monica, they had the house in Palm Springs. Kids don't want to use the second house as a, you know, as a vacation spot. They're like, oh, let's rent it out. But you know, at the time of death is when they're going to figure out whether to reassess or not, at least originally. And, you know, you just go, okay, well, let's not rent it out. And then
right.
You're like, well, let's rent it out. I mean, that's not even, I wouldn't even call that sneaky. I'd say that, you know, that's the way.
I think with this prop where it's going to be very, you know, black and white is the commercial properties. You know, mom and dad own, you know, a retail shop. You know, obviously those are being utilized as investment properties. So it's very black and white with the commercial properties. But a lot of these residential single families, I don't know how they're going to police it.
Yeah. Oh, you know, hey, it's like, I mean, it's crazy. It starts getting crazy. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to move into the 7-Eleven, you know, like. So you talk about sneaky, right? Kelly's like, these people are sneaky. I'm like, wow, maybe hey, Paul's got even crazier ideas, right?
Well, there's a lot of gray areas, you know.
There's some serious gray areas, but again, this is the black and white, you know, high level, how this is. We went over the really awesome aspects. You know, if the property costs less, if the replacement property costs less than the previous home, you just carry it over. If the replacement property costs more than the original home, a cool little quick black and white adding and subtracting calculation that you can do. And then this is essentially the negative aspects of what we all need to be aware of. As far as if you're dealing with a client that is inherited an estate, I would actually use this as a tool and let them know, you know, are you aware that we're going to have a property tax increase? Are you sure you guys are able to absorb that? Or should we potentially consider selling this?
Hey, Louie, another thing too, you know, now that we're into the practical of it is that, and this could be a big one, and that is, you know, the one thing that you avoid, I'm so glad I have a CPA. I would not be on a webinar making this statement without a CPA behind me, but you know, okay, so now let's just say you have, let's just use that round example with big numbers again. So you have the house that mom and dad bought for $1 million. The fair market value is now $3 million. They pass away. The one cool thing is, even in commercial property, whatever the property is, you get the stepped up basis.
Yes.
For tax for not property taxes, but income tax properties. It's one of, you know, people always say that, you know, you can't avoid death and taxes. The one of the very few places that you can actually avoid taxes, right, is when you inherit property. So
right.
Have the $1 million let's go crazy with the numbers. Mom and dad, well, in Santa Monica, you get mom and dad bought the property for 75 grand. They live here for 25 years. Now it's worth 5 million. When you inherit that house, that $5 million house, it goes all, you get to carry forward that instead of having $100,000, I use a little rounder, instead of using $100,000 basis, if mom and dad bought it 100,000, now it's worth 10 million, crazy numbers. You actually get now a $10 million basis. So
right.
You don't have to pay all that huge upside tax. Now, interesting. Okay. Now I've got the $10 million house, but I have a family and I live in the Valley, and I'm not moving into mom and dad's $10 million house, no matter what the property taxes are. But if I decided to keep the house, right, and rent the house out, I'm going to get this massive increase in property tax. It actually makes a lot of sense to sell the property.
Right. Exactly. Pass that problem out to someone else, because likely if I sell it in terms of income tax, my capital gain will be next to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing, Paul. Actually, when I'm going out and doing these webinars, seminars at your different forward locations, teaching them about the step up in basis and also how that principal residence exclusion is used, giving them actual concrete information. That's been the most positively received information that people have even said, I've used this to close a deal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Real estate, the only way to avoid taxation, you can literally build a real estate portfolio, 1031 it into a bigger one, into a bigger one, into a bigger one, and then pass away, and then you have your kids inherit it. You would literally build a portfolio of wealth, pass it on to your kids, and if your kids decide to sell it, you literally just built the whole portfolio tax-free. So real estate's one of the only ways you can avoid taxation.
I love
the
that.
tax code set up for two things: real estate and business. As realtors, we qualify for both of those. Yes,
dude, all the way. Louie, we're just about out of time. How do people get a hold of you, man? Again?
Yeah, so I'll pull this up, guys. This is our sorry. Let me I apologize, guys. I'll put it in the chat here. All panelists and attendees, you want to email Jocelyn or Aaron. That's Jocelyn's email, and then Aaron's email. Feel free to reach out, guys. And we can send you this handout, which sounds like it's been very well received, and we can get this PDF into your hands, and you guys can utilize this in your day-to-day operations of generating business.
And I'm going to tell you this. I feel like I have to say it. Again, I love that one of my buddies is on this webinar and sending stuff in our chat box. And Kelly again said, hey, if you have a $10 million house, you can afford the property tax, and that's the way we think about it. Okay, this is not a rich person, poor person conversation. This is the utility of the information. And I'm going to tell you this, just taking it, and I look at that, I go, yeah, you're right. That makes sense to me. I agree, Kelly. But then I take it back to myself and I go, okay, let's get back to, I know it's crazy numbers, but the real numbers, for me, right? So if I'm in Santa Monica and I buy my house for $1 million, and now it's not that much longer, it's 20 years later. Okay. And that house and my property tax is $10,000 a year. And let me tell you something. Okay. $10,000 a year, that's a hit. I'm bummed. I'm like, wow,
sure.
And I'm like, that's a bummer. Right. And so now my property tax bill is $10,000. Okay. My house is now worth, let's say, $4 million. Okay?
Sure.
I can tell you this, and this is why I raised this thing, because Kelly, I really appreciate Kelly for giving this, for asking that, because I feel the same way. But I'm going to tell you this. Now I got the $4 million house. If Kelly's going to try and sell me a $4.5 million house or a $4 million house, I can afford that, right? Because I've got the equity when I sell the house. I can afford that. And I'm going to tell you, I am not kidding you. I would not move because I cannot afford, or feel like I cannot afford, or do not want to pay a $45,000
$45,000 a year
tax bill. Or even if I could afford it today, I'm like, oh, I'm going to retire here. I cannot afford it.
Right.
I cannot afford. Well, how am I going to retire if I have a $45,000 property tax bill? Now, when you have this, and now Kelly wants to show me a $4.25 million house, she's like,
right,
hey, Paul, you know, your house is worth $4 million. Like, we could move you up to this. I'm like, conversation over. I'm not paying $45,000 a year in taxes. I'm open to this conversation now. So it seems like, oh, well, hey, you should be able to afford it. But people think this way. I think this way. So it really is a useful tool. So I know we're right at the end. Louie, thanks so much. Tristan, as always, man, I love doing these with you. You're
so good all the time, dude.
No, you too, man. I really appreciate it. Seriously. What great information.
Thanks, Louie. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. This will be recorded, and it'll go on to Paul's YouTube channel. So go on to there. You'll see it in about a day or so. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Be in touch, guys. Take care. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thanks, buddy.